Hello and welcome to the Sugar Plum Robin Knitting Podcast. My name is Ray and I'm going to be talking to you all about knitting, my knitting, what I've been up to. I've also got a little bit of sewing to share with you today and all sorts. So settle in. I hope you've got a nice cup of tea or coffee or hot chocolate or whatever you like to drink, and you're knitting maybe in your lap or your crochet, and let's get started. So welcome if you're new, and welcome back if you're not new. The people who aren't new will probably know that I'm a poet. I love to write and read poetry, and so I always like to start and end my podcast with a poem. So today I've got a couple of poems here that I like, just by other authors that are things that I've been thinking about lately, or that are kind of even tangentially related to wool and knitting. And the first one is called Sheep in Fog. It's by Sylvia Plath from Ariel. So she's quite a well-known poet. You've probably heard of her. This one is called Sheep in Fog. The hills step off into whiteness. People or stars regard me sadly. I disappoint them. The train leaves a line of breath. Oh, slow horse, the colour of rust. Hooves, dolorous bells. All morning, the morning has been blackening. A flower left out. My bones hold a stillness. The far fields melt my heart. They threaten to let me through to a heaven, starless and fatherless. A dark water. So let's just start it off with a poem. I'll put these down. Yes, hello, I hope you're all doing well. Let's get into the knitting. We can start with what I'm wearing. It's a little bit worse to wear already because I've been wearing it non-stop since I finished it, and I finished it maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and I've also been wearing it a lot around my little son Robin, who has hugged me and pawed all over me with sticky hands, and he managed to get ketchup on it already and all sorts. But I think because it's such a busy pattern, it doesn't really show it so much. So this is a test knit I was doing for Mona Zilla, who's known as Bunny Muff on Instagram and on Ravelry. I really love her designs. She has some amazing Colourwork designs especially. So I always like to test knit for Mona. And this is called, she's calling the Cochinella cardigan, I think. And there's also a jumper version, like a pullover jumper kind of version, which is called, I think, just the Ladybird pullover. So it's a steeked cardigan. You can see the steeks here where I've cut it. I have an intention to sew a ribbon over it there, but I've not decided on the right ribbon. I'm not in any particular rush. I'm waiting for the right one to occur because it's fine as it is. But yeah, so this is the cardigan. It has these ladybird motifs, and I don't know if you can see very well in this light, but these flowers here and these kind of stylized flowers here. These are done, it's knit in the round, as I said, and steeked, and then you pick up for the button band here. The button band and the collar and the bottom edge are done in this corrugated ribbing, which I think is really pretty. It looks really nice, and I think it holds its shape a bit better than normal ribbing. I find I get frustrated with cardigans because I can never get the button band looking really right. It always seems to pull in, and maybe I need to just add on more stitches, or maybe I'm going down too much of a needle size. Like, I think I go down a couple of needle sizes when I do the ribbing. Maybe I just need to go down one. But it never seems to look quite right, whereas I feel like this corrugated rib, because it's not pulling in as much as a normal rib would, it just holds itself a bit more in shape. So yeah, I made the size 5, which is a little big on me. You can probably see it's a little big and baggy, but that's because this is something that I'm intending to wear a lot, especially in the early spring. T.S. Eliot has a line in one of his poems where he says, "Midwinter spring is its own season." and nowhere is that more true than in Scotland, I think, where the kind of very early spring is incredibly frosty and cold, and I think it's colder than it is now in autumn. So I wanted to wear this in the early spring with many layers underneath. Often at that time of year I go out in my thermal undies and then my layers and then maybe 2 jumpers as well. So I wanted it to be big and baggy enough that it could be a nice warm wraparound over all of those layers. And actually another thing about that is that in the morning when I wake up, I often put it on over my pyjamas as kind of a dressing gown, and it's very cosy and squishy in the cold mornings. So this is an Aran weight knit. It's designed for Let Lopi, I think, but I have knit it in Drops Nepal, which is an alpaca and wool blend, and I had a lot of this wool left over in these exact colours, which are the colours basically that the pattern calls for. I just matched them in this yarn. So I wanted to use up those. It was a pattern that I made. I mentioned it in the last episode. I made a jumper for Audrey, my daughter, with pirates on it and a pirate theme, and she chose all the colours, but I had a lot left over, so I wanted to use that up. So I thought I would use that for this test knit. And it was lovely. I love working with this yarn. It's incredibly soft next to the skin, which is why I chose it for Audrey's pirate jumper, because she can be a little bit funny about wool that she thinks is itchy. So we have to go with very soft next to skin soft wool. It was a very smooth thing to knit. It went unbelievably quickly, a combination of the thick weight of the wool and the colourwork, which is so addictive. You want to see what the next row is going to look like again and again. And then it had just miles and miles of this plain stockinette in the round, which is lovely, lovely TV knitting. I always used to find it really boring before I had children and before my life got quite as chaotic and busy as it is. I used to find plain stockinette quite boring, and now I think it's lovely. It's so relaxing. The buttons are falling off because I tried a technique of sewing them on using my sewing machine and it didn't work. It's a technique that I think would work on just plain fabric instead of knitted fabric, but it didn't really work on the knitted fabric, and the buttons have all kind of fallen off. But just so you can have a little look at them, I need to go back and sew them on by hand. Basically, I was just trying to save time. I don't know if you can see that very clearly. Don't know if it will focus. But these buttons are Ladybirds. I have a suspicion that my laptop is not going to have a good enough camera for you to see that, but if not, I'll try and put a picture in if I can of those buttons. They're really sweet ceramic buttons that are made by a ceramic artist I think down in England. I'll put the link to her shop down in the description, where you'll also find any of the patterns that I'm mentioning and things like that, all my notes. But she's a really lovely artist. The things she makes are so beautiful, and I thought it was worth splashing out a little bit on these buttons to go with such a nice cardigan. So there's going to be 7 of them in the end. And I ordered 8 buttons just to be on the safe side, and then one of them broke in transit, so I have the perfect number. I can't break any more. Yeah, this is my cardigan. So it's top down in the round, steeking alpaca. That's something to talk about. So steeking alpaca is something I was a bit nervous of. This is only actually my second steeked garment. Now, if you don't know, steeking is where you knit a garment in the round and then you cut it to, open it down the front or to make the armholes and so on. And the reason why you might want to do that is because it's much easier and quicker to knit colourwork round and round rather than back and forth. Then you don't have to purl any bits of colourwork. So many people find it easier to do colourwork in the round, and I certainly do. I find it quicker, let's say. I do a lot of back and forth colourwork, but mostly in tarsia. So it's a useful technique to have. I was really scared of it before I did it for the first time, and I did it for the for the first time in another test knit for Mona earlier this year, my owl sweater. But actually once you've done it once, you think, oh, this is great, and it's quite exhilarating to get to that moment where you cut your knitting. But the steek I did before was in a plutalope wool, which is really grippy and rustic, and it clings to itself, so you can steek it with no bother. I almost think I didn't even need to reinforce it, but I did a crochet reinforcement for that one, and it was absolutely fine. This one, because it was alpaca, and alpaca is a much more slippy yarn, which is much less likely to cling to itself in the same way, I really didn't want it to unravel, so I used my sewing machine, which I didn't have when I did my last steek, and I sewed a reinforcement. I watched a bunch of videos on how to do it. You probably can't see, but I watched a lot of videos on how to do that, and I marked up by sewing, like basting a line down the middle, and then on either side of that I basted all the way up the middle, and then a lines on either side, so I could really see what I was doing and where I wanted to sew and where I wanted to cut, and that helped me a lot. And yeah, and then once I'd reinforced it, I went up several times. I used a zigzag stitch to make really sure with this chunky yarn that I was catching every single stitch. And then I cut it. It didn't unravel. It was all good. The colour work in this, you can see that on some of the rows there's multiple colours per row. Now, multiple colours per row is something that is quite tricky to knit if you're knitting stranded colour work. It's much easier to do 2 colours per row. So Mona gives you the option for some of this of doing 3 colours in a row stranded, or for some of it knitting it with 2 colours in a row and duplicate stitching on, so embroidering on at the end the extra details. And I did kind of a combination for this bit here and these bits on the sleeves as well. I just knit 3 colours in a row stranded Fair Isle. Whereas for the Ladybirds and the flowers here, I just went over and duplicate stitched on after. And there's actually one of the Ladybirds, I'm not sure which one, got to find it, which my my little niece did the embroidery on. I can't find it, maybe it's on the back. She did the embroidery on it, my little niece, and she is so sweet. She's called Neve, and she can knit. She's learning, and I was sitting there hand over hand doing this with her. It was a little sad. We were at a funeral, and I was trying to keep her occupied, because I think funerals can be really difficult for small children. And yeah, and she's only little. Well, she's 8, so I wanted to occupy her. So I brought my knitting, and I let her do some of the stitches on the body, and I let her do some of the embroidery. And you can tell which one it is because she's not even attempted to do the duplicate stitch. She's just sort of made it up as she goes, and it's really funny. So I've left that one as it is because I think it's so charming, and I don't think it's really very noticeable, but I know that it's there on one of them. She's done one of the Ladybird spots, and it was so sweet. She's very keen for me to make her a Minecraft themed pullover, so I will have to work on that at some point for her. I think it will be a fun project. So yeah, this is my Ladybird jumper. It was really nice to do. It was good fun. And I really liked the corrugated rib. I just love the effect of it, and it's so squishy. So yeah, this is my first finished object as well. What I'm wearing and finished objects are all one today. Now, do I have any other finished objects? I don't. This is my only finished object. I had to make a list because I'm likely to forget. But yeah, this is my first. Oh, I suppose I do. I do have a few other finished objects. You could call them finished objects. So, but it brings me nicely onto works in progress as well. Okay, so it is the time of year where, you know, dare I say it, Halloween has passed. We are thinking about Christmas. Yes, you might not be thinking about Christmas yet, but I certainly am, because I have a little Etsy shop, and in my little Etsy shop I sell hand knitted Christmas stockings. And the idea is that people let us know what they want on their Christmas stocking, like what patterns, designs, you know, colours. So you might have a situation where, like I had one, for example, a few years back, where it was for a little boy who loves the colours blue and orange and really likes sea creatures and wanted a giant squid on the stocking. So I designed him a stocking with a giant squid in like blue and white and orange, and then it had other like sea themed bits on it, and that was his Christmas stocking. So people kind of let us know what kind of ideas, what the person likes, what they're into, and what colours they like, and me and my friend B, we design a stocking and we knit it up. So we sort of split them between us, me and B. And that's that Etsy shop's just called Sugar Plum Robin, like my YouTube name. And it is really busy every year. When we get from about September onwards, it is unbelievably busy. And we always have way more people wanting stockings than we could possibly knit for. So we always have to like limit the amount of orders that we can take and have a waiting list, which is lovely. It's a great position to be in, but it also means it's the crazy knitting time when all I'm going to be knitting for the next few months is just mainly Christmas stockings. So apologies right now for the fact that you're probably going to be seeing a lot of them. But I've just sort of picked up a few that I'm working on right now for a few different orders to show you, to give you an idea. So here is one for a little girl called Estella. And her mum told me that she wanted pink and purple and white with bows and hearts and a swan. So this is our Estella stocking. So if on, you can see they're quite big. They're a good size. I love to see the inside of Colourwork. You know I do. So let me show you some of the inside. Don't know if you can see that very well. So these stockings are knit with a really chunky yarn. Actually, I hold 2 strands of double knitting weight together to make a chunky weight yarn. I use 7mm needles. I knit them just like a normal sock. So we have, we have this the braid at the top, which I suppose is not like a normal sock. We have the leg. I do a slip stitch cuff and gusset, heel, and gusset, and then just a really, really rounded toe. So that's one of them. I've got a few here to show you. This is another one for Nina, who wanted very traditional stars of Bethlehem and crosses and so on her stocking in reds and whites and greens. So very traditional, very different to Estella's one. And here's another one. I thought this one was very cute. This is for a little girl called Taya, and her mum wanted her to have bunny rabbits and snowflakes on her stocking. So she has one with bunny rabbits and snowflakes, which is very cute. Very traditional, red and white. So those are some of my stockings, some of my Christmas stockings. Like I say, I knit them in the round 7mm needles. I use a website called Stitch Fiddle to just design the charts. I use kind of free Colourwork charts as I can, or just invent them myself if I can't find any that suit. And it's a really fun thing to do. I think it's such a nice thing to do, to make like a personalised Christmas stocking. And I first started doing it when I made them for my own children, for Audrey and Robin. So I made them personalised Christmas stockings, and they loved them. And every time I was working on them around some of the other mums in our home ed group, they would say, oh, you know, can I have one? Can I buy one? Can I commission you to make one? So I ended up making the Etsy shop, and it all sort of snowballed from there. So yeah, so that's both my work in progress and kind of finished objects. I've had even more. Some of them have already been sent out. I have about another 14 to knit, with more orders coming in all the time, but I think the orders that are coming in from now won't necessarily be done in time for Christmas because it's a lot of knitting. I've got it down to a point where I can make one stocking in a day if I do nothing else. If I do nothing else, I can make one stocking a day. But generally, I have a lot of other stuff to do. I have a lot of writing commissions this year as well, so I have a lot of work on that, and then looking after my kids as well. So yeah, those are my Christmas stockings. They get taken around with me everywhere at this time of year, and again, all the other parents are very used to seeing me with them. My daughter is home educated, and we spend a lot of time outdoors, a lot of time in the woods, a lot of time with our other home ed pals and groups and things, and we sit around a fire in the woods trying to stay warm for this time of year, and I'm always there with my knitting, with my stockings. Which was really funny because it was Halloween and I was still there knitting on my Christmas stockings. And everyone else is not really thinking about Christmas yet, I don't think. So yeah, I suppose that's a few finished objects and a few works in progress. And it leads on quite nicely as well to another work in progress that I have just now. So also on my Etsy shop, I take commissions for other kinds of knitting, and one of the ones that I do quite often are Christmas sweater vests, which are really cute. And you will have seen one of these last year if you were watching the podcast back then, because last Christmas I knit one of these for my little son Robin, and I've got his one here to show you so you can get an idea of it. Here it is, Robin's little Christmas sweater vest. And again, this is just, I made up the pattern and I just used for the Colourwork lots of different free charts or made up charts and things that I found online, and just sort of made it up as I went along. Again, it's got corrugated rib. I love a corrugated rib. So it's got the corrugated rib and the rest of it, and it's again double knitting weight wool held double. I use a variety of different acrylic wools to make this, so that it can be washed and laundered, and so that it can sit for the whole year up in the loft and not get mothy. So that's Robin's one, and I had a commission to make a ladies size one this year, an American size 6 to 8, I think she asked for. So I've been working on that. So that's my next work in progress. Here you can see I've just split for the sleeves. So I do these in the round, again Colourwork in the round, up to the armholes, and then I go back and forward. So I've got the bottom bit here, and then the trees on here. So this is the back. You can see on Robin's, on the back there are trees, and on the front there's the name. So this is going to have the name on the front. So I'm making good progress on this. I imagine by the next time I podcast I should have this finished. Really, it will only take me a couple more days because there's no sleeves, so I won't get stuck on Sleeve Island. But yeah, it's again 7mm needles, goes very fast in the round. It's a fun thing to make. It's very festive. I'll show you the inside. I'd like to see the inside of Colourwork. I just think it's so interesting to see the inside of Colourwork, so that you don't normally see. So that's my Christmas whips, but I have some other non-Christmas whips to share with you, and the first is one that I'm so nearly finished on, and I'm loving it so much. I'm enjoying this project and I don't want it to end, and I wish I had more time to dedicate to it and less time to spend knitting Christmas stockings, even though I do really like knitting the Christmas stockings. This is my Mariposa pullover. It's very nearly done. The first sleeve is done, the second sleeve is nearly done. I think you're supposed to pick up and do a little rib at the collar, but I think I'm not going to because of this slip stitch pattern here. It doesn't curl, so I think I might just go around and like weave in edges, neaten the edges, and leave it like that because I really like the way it fits when I try it on. So I don't know if you can see the lovely stitch pattern on this, which is made by slipping stitches and holding the yarn in front every other row. And again, this was knit in the round up to the sleeves. So you slip the stitches and carry the yarn in front, and then on the 5th row you knit underneath those stitches. It's an absolutely lovely pattern, Mariposa, and I'm knitting this in the West Yorkshire Spinners Blueface Leicester yarn. The sleeves look really short, but that's because it's a drop shoulder. You can see it's very wide and boxy, so that actually comes down, and it's plenty long enough for my sleeves. So yeah, the pattern is by Beatriz Rubio, and it is just lovely. I saw this pattern first a bit over a year ago when my friend Lucy was knitting it, and she knit an absolutely gorgeous version, I think in a rust kind of orangey colour, which I also really like. And I knew I wanted to make it, but after a few false starts, it was over the summer, we were travelling with my little boy Robin, who is disabled and struggles a lot with changes and things. It was a bit stressful. It was nice to go and see family, but it was stressful to do all the travelling with him. So while I was down there in England, I treated myself to this wool. This is the West Yorkshire Spinners Blueface Leicester. It's undyed. It smells amazing. It smells lovely and sheepy. And it's I've blocked the body of this so you can see how the stitch pattern comes out, because before I blocked it, it was a bit bobbly, just due to the way that when you slip the stitches, it can pull in a little, but it blocked out beautifully. So I bought this yarn to kind of console myself for all of the sleepless nights I was having with Robin, who didn't want to settle while we were in a new place. And I wound it up and just cast on this sweater, and I've been knitting it since the summer, on and off, and I've had lots of other things come and go on the needles and lots of other projects and bits, so I've not been rushing this at all, because I'm really enjoying the process of knitting this. Every part of it has been a joy. It's so simple, but the texture is beautiful. It's the kind of thing where it's incredibly peaceful and meditative to knit, and I've really enjoyed it. I'll be a little sad for it to be finished when it's done, but I will be very delighted to wear it. Very delighted indeed, because it is so perfectly me. It's one of my perfect colours. So although I love the bright Ladybirds and everything, this kind of gentle, undyed, brownish, beigey sheep colour is my ideal. I love anything in kind of earth tones and earth colours. So I'm looking forward to wearing this so much. It's going to keep me cozy in the winter. It's going to be absolutely lovely. I already can tell I'm just going to live in it. I really like an oversized jumper, as you can maybe tell. I really like something that's big and cozy and that I can wrap around me and be very baggy. So this is very perfect for that. It is boxy, oversized, snuggly. The yarn is unbelievably soft, considering it's non-superwash, really quite unprocessed wool, and it's definitely next to skin soft, especially after washing and blocking it. It has just become the softest and really drapey. I mean, look at the drape on this for wool, for something that's pure wool. I mean, I'm quite surprised at how lovely and drapey it is. Yeah. Can you tell I really like this project? Maybe you can. I love it very much. It's one of my favourite things I've been working on lately. And I think there's a good lesson in that. Something about how the kind of sweaters that I like to wear are often very muted, toned down, like a little bit of texture, whereas the things I like to knit often are a lot of colour work, a lot of really bold colour and fun patterns, because they're fun to knit and exciting. But yeah, I definitely need occasionally to have one of these kind of oatmeal-y patterns which are just good and comforting and hearty. So that's my Mariposa. This down here. What else have I had? Oh yes, so again I started this over a year ago. I'm very slow with some of my whips because I always have lots and lots of things on the needles at any one given time, so any one thing only gets a little bit of work done on it at a time. So I started this project around this time last year, and then I put it away for many months because I was doing all of my Christmas stocking knitting and all of the various, I made lots of like Christmas hats and all sorts last year for people. And then I picked it up again this autumn because it seemed like such an autumny knit to pick up. And that is a sweater I'm designing myself, and I'm really pleased with it so far. It's inspired by the Faraway tree books. In fact, the Faraway tree books are probably here on the shelf. Yeah, here we go. Whoop. This is my living room, which is full of books. So you're propped on a bookshelf right now, and there's bookshelves all around here on other walls that you can't see. But this is the Magic Faraway Tree by Enid Blyton. The Faraway Tree books are some of my daughter's favourites. They are so lovely and so charming. We've been reading them together since she was very small, and we reread them over and over as our bedtime stories, kind of in between other bedtime stories that we read. She's 10, but I don't think you're ever too old to be read a bedtime story. I certainly still love to be read aloud too. Yes. Silky the Fairy. So, we love the Faraway Tree, and I wanted to come up with a sweater pattern that was inspired by that, so I came up with this design. It's for children, so I'm trying to write up the pattern as I go with the view to at some point having it test knit and releasing it. It will be in like a variety of children's sizes. I'll show you it so far. So this is my swatch for it I made. This is the jumper itself. Here we go. Ooh, it's getting a bit tangled. It has many colours. So here you can see. And the bottom wants to roll. I've not blocked it yet. I need to block the bottom so that the moss stitch at the bottom doesn't want to roll. I thought moss stitch was particularly appropriate for the mossy enchanted wood. And then it has all of these. So one thing about the Faraway Tree that's magical is that it grows different kinds of fruit and different kinds of nuts all the way up it. So at some point you might have acorns, at some point chestnuts, at some point apples, at some point cherries or pears. So there's all those different fruits and nuts and leaves along here. The mushrooms at the bottom. This is the little squirrel. There's a little squirrel who lives in the tree. So inside the tree, inside the Faraway Tree, which is the biggest tree in the forest, there is a slide that goes down all the way round, like round and round inside the tree from the top to the bottom, called the slippery slip. And there's a squirrel who lives at the bottom of the tree who will collect the cushions that you slid down on and return them back up to Moonface, who owns the slippery slip up at the top. So there's the squirrel. There's lots of gnomes and pixies and goblins, so I put some little gnomes in. Acorns, cherries, apples, and then at the top, I don't know if you can see, it's just starting. So at the top we start to go back and forward. This bit's in the round, you split for the sleeves and you start to go back and forward, and at the top there's a tree top with apples and leaves, so that's done in intarsia, and you can see it's all a mess inside because I've not woven in any ends, but I will do. And then the sleeves will have a similar pattern to this going up. So yeah, that's my Faraway Tree design, which I've been knitting. I was originally knitting this for Audrey, but Audrey has very, very many knitted jumpers now at this point. And I was working on it at one of our home ed groups that we go to. It smells of fire smoke because I've been knitting it around the fire. And a little boy called Finn, who always dresses very flamboyantly. He always has many colours and many things, and he's got, you know, great sartorial kind of elegance to him. And he said, "Oh, that's amazing." And every time he would say, "Oh, I wish that was for me. I love it so much." So in the end, me and Audrey, we had a discussion and we decided maybe this needs to be for Finn because he loves it so much. So we're making it for Finn now. and hopefully Finn will let me take some pictures of it on him so I can show you what it looks like on him when it's finished. I'm not in any particular rush to finish it. I checked with Finn. He said he would rather I went slowly and made fewer mistakes, which I think is very wise of Finn. So yeah, so I'm making my Faraway jumper for Finn. He's actually decided to become a lawyer based entirely on the fact that he managed to convince me to make this jumper for him instead of Audrey, which I think is very funny. It's knit in double knitting wool. I'm making this in Drops Charisma, which is 100% wool, but it's very affordable, and it comes in many colours, which was my main criteria for the yarn I wanted to use for it. So that is my last work in progress. It's really special, I think, because I'm designing it myself. Pattern writing is really hard. There are so many things to remember and think about, and I keep not noting things down and thinking I'll remember, and then having to go back and think, oh no, what was I doing there? But I'm getting there. I'm really not looking forward to grading it for all the different sizes. Have any of you done that before? Do you have any tips? Maybe you could let me know if there are any tips or resources that you can recommend for grading a pattern in different sizes and working out how much yarn the different sizes would take. I don't really know how that's done. And then, yeah, I will hopefully get a test and get it up so that people can make it, because that would be fun, right? Okay. So I think I'm going to show some sewing now, and I know if sewing's not really your thing, then by all means you can leave at this point. Thank you for joining me. It was lovely to see you. But if sewing is your thing and you would like to see some sewing, then I have some sewing. So I will get some here for you. So the first thing I'd like to show you is a Halloween costume that I made for Audrey. I actually made matching costumes for Audrey and her friend Madeline because they wanted to have like a duo Halloween costume. They were fire and ice, and so I made them dresses with the fire and ice theme. And but I've just got Audrey's here because Madeline obviously has hers at her house, and I can show you what I mean. So I used a pattern from Little Lizard King, which is a pattern website which I really love. I think their stuff is so nice. I can so much recommend going to see all their beautiful dresses, and I really love that their sizes for their children's dresses go up to size 14. Me and Audrey appreciate that because she is very tall. So here is the pattern. It was called Leans, the pattern. Again, I'll put the link below. This is the dress that I made for Audrey. Ooh, it's got the tulle going everywhere. It was the first thing. The tulle is a bit ruffled up because she was wearing it. Yeah, here we go. It was my first time sewing with tulle, and it was a bit tricky. Oh my goodness, it was a lot tricky actually. It was really hard to make the tulle work, but we got there, and the tulle did work. So this is it. This is the back. I just used snap fastenings on the back. I really like how the back has this like V, this low V. I think it's really sweet. So this pattern has these little cap sleeves. It comes with a variety of different possible sleeves that you could use, and I just went for these little cap sleeves. I used this flame fabric, and Madeline's one was in kind of a turquoise blue with white and with blue like ice crystals on it, and she had white tulle. So this is the black tulle, and then it has this red underskirt. I really love the asymmetrical overskirt with the flames on, which shorter at one side. It was tricky to make, but I'm really pleased with how it came out, and it fits Audrey perfectly, which is one of the joys of being able to sew your own things, is that you can make things that, if you get everything right, they fit really well. So I could make this sort of slender enough for Audrey, but also tall enough for her by just adjusting the patterns, I made it the length of the 14-year-old size. And she liked it. She was really pleased with it. Madeline liked hers. Apparently she told her mum on the way home that it was her favourite Halloween costume she's ever had, which was lovely. It's a little bit of like a bucket list thing for me to be able to make my kids' Halloween costumes. I've never really had the sewing skills to do it before. This was the first year that I was able to do it, and I was so pleased. They were so cute. It was adorable. And the next sewing thing that I have been sewing, I've been quilting, I've been learning to quilt. And I have an unfinished quilt, an autumn themed quilt. And I've actually finished it a few weeks ago, and I still haven't done the final stage, which is just to put the binding around the edges. But my kids have still been curling up in it all the time. It lives on our sofa, so I'm definitely going to be making more quilts once I've properly finished this. So I have some dark brown fabric to put as the binding around the edges, so you have to forgive that it's got raggedy edges, but you can put it otherwise. So here is, it's big, so I won't be able to show it all very well. I'll hold it up, you can kind of see. So here is the quilt. The sewing is not all perfect, to say the least. You can see it on the back here. There. Quilty bits. So I just did it in squares. I got a couple of charm packs, which are packs of pre-cut squares of fabric, and I just made it out of that, just to kind of, because I'm learning, this is my first ever quilt, and I wanted to get some of the skills down. And I put this backing on. I used like a cotton batting to go inside it. I really love it. I love it so much. I just did it really simply, just squares together, and then I can't remember what they call it, like echo quilting or something, where you just quilt on the lines, along the lines that the fabric, that the patchwork already makes. I didn't do any kind of fancy quilting, because that seems like a way in the future kind of skill once I'm more comfortable with the basics of quilting. I followed some tutorials online on how to do this, and I was really pleased with it. It was just so fun to put all the patches together and decide, you know, where I wanted each patch to be and try and balance the colours out. I really love some of these patches. Like, look at those little acorns. They're so cute. And squirrels and all sorts. Oh my goodness me. I love this. And it's about a child's bed size. About the size for a child's bed. So I was initially thinking it could go on Robin's bed. He still has like a little child's bed. But it's just lived on the sofa. It's actually a perfect sofa blanket size. So I think this is a size I will be making many times for our sofa. I already have plans for a Christmas one. I have no time, but I do have plans. So, yeah, this is my final sewing thing to share. I've been sewing absolutely loads over the last few months since I got my sewing machine. I've always got some sewing project on the go, and so I'm not going to show you all of them because it's just ridiculous, the number of things that I make, but I really love it. Actually, no, I've not got them here. I was going to say one of the things I could show you. I sewed some little Christmas ornaments. I'll show you in a future one because they were so cute. They were really lovely to make. I probably put them away because we've had all our Halloween stuff out. So yeah, I think I will finish there. I will share with you our final poem. So this final poem is by Edwin Morgan, who is a poet I really, really love. He was a Scottish poet. He was a really well-known Scottish poet, and he wrote just lots of absolutely incredible poetry and an incredible amount of it, and I can recommend you look him up. I think I've probably read some Edwin Morgan poems before. The poem I'm going to read you today is called Wildcat, and it's from his Beasts of Scotland series. The Scottish wildcat is a really cool, although endangered animal that lives in Scotland, mostly in the Highlands and in the forests. It's not a huge cat, but it's bigger than a domestic cat, and they're really hard to find because they're really endangered and because they are notoriously kind of shy of being seen and of people. So they're predators, but they will just slink around in the shadows. They're really hard to see. But if you do manage to see one, you're very lucky, and they're very beautiful. So this poem is about the Scottish wildcat, and it's called Wildcat. When did you last see me? Never, perhaps. You saw the ferns moving. Was it the wind? It's true the fronds are a good camouflage for my stripes, but I can tell you I was not there. Not then. Does that make it any easier? I mean, that you really failed to miss anything. If you still want to meet this shy, solitary, etc., well, do you? One of those days when I am not snatching rabbits, but casing your chicken coop. Not extinct, you know. Maybe a spirit. Spirit of Scotland, eh? I haven't lost my drift. Here you are then, meeting me at the wire of the hen run, twilight woods behind. I'm doing my crouching and spitting, gently lashing a bushy tail, all right. You want to communicate? Try to stroke me, lose a finger. Try to tame me, lose a face. But frankly, this is academic. I shun farms, crofts, dogs, guns. I've had that. Where I love to be, I doubt if you will ever find me. I prowl the high bracken. I am comforted by the rocks. I rub the harsh trunks of the Caledonian forest, a ghost among ghosts. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you have a lovely week and I will see you next time. Goodbye.